Okay.
So we'll go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was in high school when the war was broke out in 1941. I was in high school in Nevada, and I remember I was working at a service station there on December 7th. And I had an older brother that he went into the Air Force in January of '42, and he ended up as an engineer on a B-17. And so he was 2 years ahead of me in high school. But at that time in high school, it was just an accepted fact that if you were a male, you would end up in the military. That was just the plan. That's what happened. And I remember seeing, since my brother was in the Air Force, I thought, well, that'd be a pretty good thing. And I remember reading, there was an ad in a newspaper or a magazine or something that said that if you, if you go through, if you went in the Air Force and if you ended up as a flying officer, pilot or navigator or bombardier, I remember certain things, that your income would be $327 a month, because whatever it was, you got 50% more if you were a flying personnel in the Air Force. Well, that was all right to me. So the way in which I got involved in the Air Force, I knew I was going to, when I got to be graduate from high school, I would be going into the military. And a neighbor of ours was the commander of the VFW. And he said, why don't you go down to Des Moines and take the test to be an aviation cadet? And I said, well, that sounds pretty good. So I did. I hitchhiked down to Des Moines, went to the old Federal building. And then when I got home, he was standing out in his yard, and he said, well, how did it go? And I said, well, I didn't make it. He said, well, you're going back. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. He said, you're going back. And so a day or two later, I hitchhiked back to Des Moines, and I passed the test, but I failed the eye exam. So when I got back home, he said, how did you do? And I told him again. He said, you're going back. And I said, I don't know. And he said, you're going back. So I went back a couple days later, and I passed the eye exam, and I ended up, my vision was 20/10, which is was very good for that, without glasses, of course. So when as soon as I graduated from high school in May of '43, a week later I was in the military. I went down to the old Federal building in Des Moines, and that's where I was inducted into the military, and then sent to Jefferson Barracks, Missouri for basic training. Everybody had to go through basic training. And then I was, when we finished basic training, I was going into what was called CTD. That was those words, those letters stand for Cadet Training Detachment. And so lo and behold, I was sent to Des Moines. I was sent to Drake University. So I was in Drake for a brief period of time, from about August of '43 until about October, maybe late October. And our barracks in Des Moines, believe it or not, was on the 5th floor of the University Christian Church. So we were just taking, just routine courses, geography, and also some things that pertain to military. But then went to, from there, went to...
Okay, hang on a second. Let me stop you for a second.
Okay.
Okay, so we were at Drake College.
Drake University, right?
University.
Yeah, and when that program ended, then went to pre-flight at Santa Ana, California. So this took all of us out to Santa Ana. And then that lasted until January of '44, at which time went to primary flight school at Dos Palos, California, which is up in the San Joaquin Valley. And so that's when you learn to fly. And we flew PT-17s, which is a Stearman aircraft. The most fun, flying that was fun. After that, it got to be work. And then when I finished that, then went to basic flying school at Merced, California, which was not too far away. And there we flew a single-engine aircraft. It was a BT-13. It was a bigger aircraft, and I just learned more about flying and so forth. And then when I finished that, finished basic flying school, went to Fort Sumner, New Mexico, to twin-engine flying school. And then went through that and finished that on August 4th of 1944. Then got a week off and went home.
What do folks think of you joining up and doing this stuff?
Well, that was just an accepted fact. I mean, that was normal. Everybody was, if you were a male, you were in the military. And since I had a brother that was in the Air Force, I mean, it was fine. My parents were actually working at the ordnance plant in Ankeny.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what they were doing at the time. So then, after that 7-day leave was up, I went to Kingman, New Mexico. I was 19. I was age 19 at the time, and went to co-pilot school at Kingman, Arizona. I was 19 years of age when I first flew a 4-engine aircraft, and so completed that. And after you completed that training, then I was sent to Sioux City Air Base, and that's where the crews. That was called a transition school. And that's where you were assigned to a crew, and then you were trained, you know, in various aspects of the B-17 aircraft, and then you learned formation flying and all that type of thing.
Over Iowa and Nebraska?
Yeah, over Iowa and Nebraska.
Now, what was a day? What would a routine day have been like, or was like in Sioux City?
Well, routine day would be, the thing was just training. You'd get out and get, you might, one day you might be doing bombing. That would be training for your bombardier. And so there was a bombing range, as I recall, up in South Dakota. And so the thing, what you'd do, you'd, excuse me. So what the thing you do, you'd get, your navigator would tell you where you were going.
Mm-hmm.
You relied on your navigator completely. And ours was excellent. So he'd tell you where we were going, and so you'd pick out the heading and get there, and then you'd get maybe 20, 30 miles away, and then on that day, the bombardier was training on his Norden bomb site. And so we had these dead bombs. They would just maybe filled with sand or something, but his job was to learn how to use that Norden bomb site. And when your Norden bomb site is engaged, that Norden bomb site actually flies the airplane. It has all the controls. The pilots do not have control of the aircraft at that time. So that's, and then as soon as you drop the bomb, well, then the Norden bomb site would disengage, and then you'd take over the aircraft. So you might do that sometime. Then you might, other days, you'd just be training the navigator, where he was given a place, different places for you to go around the Midwest.
Where were some of the did you bomb at night? Did you bomb Des Moines or anything at night, or Lexington, Nebraska, or something?
No, the 8th Air Force never bombed at night. The British bombed at night. Right. We were always doing ours because the British thought we were crazy to try to do that in the daylight when the Germans' aircraft could see you. And so your training missions could be for the navigator, they could be for the bombardier, or then they would be for the pilots. They'd give us a place to go. And we were to be there at a certain time. So you had to make sure that you you got to altitude at the right time. You had to be at a certain altitude. You had to be there at a certain time. So that was it. So you'd gauge your airspeed, and you were also they wanted to make sure how much fuel you used. So if
And all at Sioux City.
yeah, all this was training around Sioux City.
Now, I wonder why. Do you suppose? I wonder why they picked Sioux City as a place? As a
Well,
training area?
oh, there were many transition schools. There was one in Idaho. There were Sioux City was a decent place. What they would usually try to do would I don't know why, I just assumed that it wasn't the largest place in the world, but it was a certain decent sized community. And so we'd fly out over Nebraska and Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota, North and South Dakota, that type of thing, different type of training things. And then when you completed that, then you also learned formation flying. That was the very, very important thing, was formation flying. And then when you completed that, then we were sent sent overseas.
Well, how many missions did you? I mean, how long did you stay at Sioux City?
At Sioux City, I suppose. No, I would think we were probably there for about 3 months.
Okay.
3 months, maybe.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking, because we're almost at the same latitude as Germany. They're a little farther south, but didn't that terrain look a little similar to Germany's, or not?
Yeah.
Guess it didn't make any difference.
I don't recall, but as I think about it, I've spent time in Germany. Yeah, it was pretty much the same.
Okay.
But it was what the big thing was the training for your navigator, your bombardier, and formation flying. Those were the important things, because that's what you were going to do. And so then in January of '45, I think it was in January '45, late, maybe mid-January, something like that. We got on we ended up someplace in New Jersey at a pier there, and then we were put on the ship. I remember the name of the ship was called the Ile-de-France, and sent overseas.
Okay, why didn't you fly over? Too dangerous?
No, they did fly some aircraft over, but at that time, and that was how we were. I don't know why, but we were just, that's how we got over there. And so we ended up, we docked in the Firth of Clyde, which is at Glasgow, Scotland. And then from there went to a place called Stone. And it was at Stone where you were assigned to whatever bomb group you were assigned. And the one thing I remember being at Stone, some person that was coming back, I mean, if you were going into the 8th Air Force, you went through Stone, and if you were coming back, you exited through Stone. And I just remember a person said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "Someplace called the 100th Bomb Group." And he said, I remember his comment, he said, "You poor bastard." Because the 100th Bomb Group was known as the Bloody 100th because of the losses. But anyway, it was then we went to this place called Thorpe Abbott. And we were there then of course you did some training there before they'd let you go on a mission. So you got used to their system, which was of most important. And then the one thing I remember, you know, when you're going on a mission, you'd go to briefing. And in this barracks in which we were housed, as I said, there were 3 crews of us there, 3 pilot, co-pilot, bombardier, and navigator. So there were 12 of us, and just so happened that my bunk, like when the person would come inside the front door, he'd just turn to the left, and I was on the top bunk, and he'd tap me on the shoulder, and he'd just say, "Lieutenant, briefing is at 4 o'clock." Or whatever time it was, and this might be 3:15 in the morning or 3 o'clock. So thing is, we would get up, get dressed, and go have breakfast, and then go to briefing. And the briefing room was just a huge Quonset hut. And as you walked into this briefing room, there was, like over here on the wall, there was this map, but it was always, they had a drapery over the map. And so then the briefing officer would come in, and then your entire crew was at briefing. Everybody, the officers and the gunners and the crew chief and whomever, they're in briefing. And then they would, obviously you all pop to attention when the briefing officers came in, and then you'd say something, then they'd pull back the map, and it would show the string as to from where you were going, a string from Thorpe Abbott over to our rally point, which is usually at Lowestoft, and then we'd be briefed as to what we were to do that day. Our takeoff time was such, our rally direction was such. We were to rally at a certain altitude, assemble. I mean, this is your squadron. Your squadron was to whichever group was there. Like if we had there were four of us, 4 squadrons. And if we were the lead group, well, then we'd be the first at the rally point, and then flight squadron was composed of 9 aircraft, and then a group was composed of 4 squadrons. So you got 9 4s, 36. And but the thing is, before they tell you where you were going, what to expect, what the flak was expected to be, where your rally point was, where your IP was. The IP, that's your initial point. And then they'd have where's the bomb, where your bomb target is. And as I recall, your bomb run was usually it could be quite extensive because everybody had to get together.
Well, all this was worked out during the briefing.
All this was told to you at the briefing, yes.
So your height, your altitude, where your spot was in the squadron, where your squadron was in the group.
That's true.
Everything, and if you were low group, high group,
right,
it was all laid out at the briefing. So when you got to the
right,
rally point, you just fit into where you were supposed to.
Yeah, everybody, you knew where you fit. You knew where your position was in the squadron. You knew where your squadron's position was in the group. And you were to be at this rally point at a certain time. And even this was very, very important. If you were to be at the rally point at, say, at 5:14, by God, you were expected to be at that rally point at 5:14, not 5:13, not 5:14 30 seconds, at 5:14. And this is what the navigator would tell you as an example. Okay, tighten your turn. And we climbed at 150 miles an hour. We flew level at 150 miles an hour, and we let down at 150 miles an hour. That was the constant speed of everything. And that was the constant speed of all of the people usually in the 3rd Division, which is the 3rd Division is made up of many, many different squadrons. But all this was outlined very precisely in the briefing. And then the weather officer would brief you as to what weather to expect. Now, the weather forecasting 60 years ago, in comparison to what it is today, I mean, it's almost a joke. But they did their best. They did their best. And sometimes, I mean, it was pretty much of a guess, but they had to say something. But But and one of the very important time factors so important, and one of the very last things that was done at briefing was everybody hacked their watch. And you'd take your watch off, and he'd say, hack at 4:42. Okay, so you'd turn your watch to 4:42, and you'd pull the stem out because that would stop the watch. And then he'd get down to 10, 9, 8, and then we got down to 0. He'd get down to 1, and he'd say, hack. And that's, you engaged your watch, and in that way, every person in the group was on the absolute same time. And
Were those Timex watches?
no, they weren't Timex watches. They were pretty good watches, but my point is, everything had to be precise, as precise as you possibly could be, and everybody had to do the same thing.
Right.
And so then we would climb. You'd climb to altitude, and usually you'd put on your oxygen mask about 12,000 feet, because you just had to be. I mean, if you have oxygen, you can breathe and think. Otherwise, you don't.
Let me ask you, at what altitude does it start getting real cold when those bomber jackets came in handy, and the shoes and the gloves?
Well, it was, it got cold. The coldest I remember is minus 63 degrees, 0. But honestly, you really didn't think about the cold. I mean, as I recall back, that wasn't because you were thinking about other things. You were involved in something. So it was just accepted that, okay, it's cold, so what the hell? So what? Everybody here is cold. That's just part of the deal. And so your group you would be given a certain, okay, you fly this direction for a certain period of time, this direction, and then you'd have, and they would tell you your bombing altitude today is like 32,500, and you would always refer to your altitude as, if you were above a certain altitude, you referred to it as angel, and if you were below a certain altitude, it was devil. Because everybody then knew, if you said I'm a 32.5 or 32.4, angel 32.4, then you'd know, okay, we got another 100 feet to go. Or I'm at 29.6. I'm devil's 29.6. That meant, okay, you're that many feet below what is going to be your bombing altitude. So you get to the significant thing was you could do some evasion and some turns and so forth, but when you got to the IP, the initial point, and when you headed down the bomb run, you didn't deviate anything. You picked out whatever this heading was, and that was absolute, and your speed was absolute. You didn't vary anything. Your altitude, at say that 32.4 or whatever was your bombing altitude that day, and you went absolute straight. You didn't veer from anything. And the flak, I mean, the Germans were excellent. That they could lay that damn flak just right at your, on the goddamn foot at which you were flying. They were excellent at what they at their anti-aircraft. And then, see, the Germans had the first jet aircraft, and on the very first mission that we flew, I mean, I was 20 years old. Hell, all I know is, okay, get out to the airplane, get on this thing, and at that time I was flying co-pilot. I was the youngest person on the crew by far. The pilot was 26, the navigator was about...
Do you remember their names? Do you remember the first, what was the first guy? Was that Aubuchon?
Yeah, Ed Aubuchon was, he was 26. Oliver Dunn was the navigator. He was probably 24, 25.
Myron Alexander?
Mike Alexander was 26. Harold Hyde was our tail gunner. He was 35. And I was the youngest by probably 2 or 3 years, and I was always referred to as junior. That was just by everybody. And the other 3 officers and the enlisted men, they referred to me as junior. That was okay, because I was. And we got out to the. I remember in the briefing that day, they said we were going to be hauling, instead of bombs, we were hauling tinfoil that day. It didn't mean a damn thing to me. What the hell? So we had a load of tinfoil instead of bombs, and the 100th Bomb Group was leading the 3rd Division that day. And so they got, when you got down to the IP, your initial point, then there were 3 of us aircraft that were hauling tinfoil. And Jack Thrasher, he was leading us, and then we were flying on his right, and another airplane flying on his left. Now, the reason we were hauling tinfoil, the idea was they hoped that you could drop this tinfoil and it would jam the German radar. I was never convinced that it worked. And the thing is, we got down on the bomb run, and Thrasher, I remember him saying, "Okay, spread out." And okay, boom. So instead of being locked in, he said, "Okay, spread out." And he said, "Okay." He called us by name, by number. Dog 724, wider, or something like that. Okay, so we spread out more. And then all of a sudden, what I remember is the aircraft was starting to vibrate. And what came through my mind, I thought, oh, Jesus Christ, what a time to lose an engine. And so I looked at the instruments, and hell, the engines they're fine. There's not a damn thing wrong with them, but there's just vibration. Well, just about that time, I saw during enemy 262 go over our right wing, one under the right wing, one under our left wing, and the one under the left wing, he pulled up and blasted Thrasher. I mean, this is my first mission, my initiation. And first thing I'm going down the bomb run, and boom, I see this Jack Thrasher is blown out of the air. So that was my initiation to see. I found out what combat was like real early.
But you had prior knowledge of the Messerschmitt 262 before you saw it, right? Nobody knew really what it was, did they?
Well, I think we'd probably seen pictures of it or something like that.
So they knew it existed.
Oh yeah, we knew that they existed, but the thing is, their speed was just something else.
Oh yeah.
They could come in, they could make it. See, you were jumped. That's what they referred to. You were jumped by enemy aircraft, So we were jumped by these Me-262s, and boom. And what I do remember, when we got back, now when you get, at the end of every mission, when you get back, if you get back, you're debriefed. And so then they ask every person, what did you see today? What was it? So that way they get all these crews are debriefed, and then they put all the information together, then they can arrive at some kind of consensus what the hell went on that day.
Right.
And I remember we were told after the briefing was, you see, the 100th Bomb Group was leading the 3rd Division, and since the 100th Bomb Group was leading the 3rd Division, the person in charge was usually a colonel, and the colonel was flying co-pilot in the lead aircraft of the 100th Bomb Group. And we learned a few days later that he said that if it hadn't have been for the gunners on that on the Abishon's crew, he had blown him out of the air instead of Thrasher. So we were fortunate that these gunners, our gunners, did pick these up. And
Okay, that would be Donald Bridge,
Don Bridge, he was a ball turret gunner.
Albert Gillen.
Duke Gillen, he was a radio operator.
You mentioned Harold Hyde.
Right.
Garland Miller.
Garland Miller was he was a waist gunner.
What about Bob Arthur? He says BTG.
Oh, no, Duke. Yeah.
Sergeant.
Oh, yeah. Who you say? Duke Gillen? Who'd you say first?
I said
You said Don Bridge. Don
Bridge.
He was a ball turret gunner,
Ball turret gunner, and then ROG.
radio operator. That was Duke Gillen, I
And
think.
a gunner, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, all of the
Harold Hyde, tail gunner. Garland Miller was the waist gunner.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Did you have two waist gunners, or was that the job of?
Well, the radio operator was also a waist gunner.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then the engineer, I can't remember his name. Oh, God, I'm getting so.
Bob Arthur.
Okay, Bob Arthur, right. Mm-hmm.
It says TTE.
Right.
I assume that's a
Top turret engineer, right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then also in the front of the aircraft, the bombardier was expected to be a gunner,
Right.
and also the navigator was expected to be a gunner, you see.
Right.
So, it was the ball turret gunner and the tail gunner and the top turret gunner. They're the ones that picked up these ME-262s along with I started firing, and that was the vibration I felt.
Right.
I'd forgotten about what it was. I mean, I hadn't felt that type of thing since I was training in Sioux City, because you could train your gunners up there too, you see. But I'd just forgotten about what that felt like.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. The first thing I thought about when I had this vibration was, oh, what the hell of a time to lose an engine, for Christ's sake. But anyway, that was
So what exactly? You were co-pilot to
Right.
to Ed.
right. Mm-hmm.
Abishon.
Mhm.
What exactly was your job other than to keep a 360-degree looking for bad guys, the bogeys,
Okay.
and as compared to the pilot's job?
Okay. Well, he would usually he'd always take off. He would always take off, and so the co-pilot's job at that time is to call out your airspeed and your flaps and all that, and then that to get off, and then the pilot would usually fly up to a certain, and then he'd say, boom, then as I say, okay, take it, and so the co-pilot would fly it. And so that's what you'd do. You'd trade off back and forth of flying the airplane.
Spell each other.
Sure, right. And so that's what I did. And then sometimes, sometimes I would land it or he would land it, whatever, because you had to, if you had to do it sometime, you had to know what the hell you were doing. Now I was fortunate. I had a very good pilot. He was an excellent in the airplane. But other than that, he was kind of a horse's ass. But he absolutely was a tremendous person in an airplane. But then, after about our third or fourth mission, we were designated to be what's called deputy lead. And when you're doing that, now another thing is, a thing that surprised damn near everybody, all the other pilots and co-pilots I ever talked with, on the bomb run, you're either flying the airplane or you're sitting there. And what we would do, if he was flying the airplane, I would man the throttles. And that way, because you don't push or pull, you squeeze. You need a little more power here, a little more power here, whatever, just to take the position, whatever. And other people.
All four engines.
Oh yeah, but you had them all in one hand.
Right.
All in one hand.
Had them in there.
Yeah, I had all four engines in one hand. And this is what people couldn't believe, that he could fly the airplane, and I'd man the throttles, or I might be flying the airplane on the bomb run, and he was manning the throttles, you see. I mean, because the worst thing you can do is just be sitting there and doing nothing. I never had to do that. So that was just an excellent thing that he and I worked out together.
Right.
But after I think about the third mission, well, then they found out that we knew what we were doing, and then they designated us to be what's called deputy lead. And in a squadron, you have 3 aircraft up here, 3 here, and 3 on the lower.
Right.
And the deputy lead, like you've got the 3 up, you got 1 here, 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 and then you got the deputy lead is flying underneath, and then you got this, this, and this, and you got the down below you.
Right.
So we would fly deputy lead. That means we were right in the center. I mean, we got 3 airplanes above us, 3 below us, and then we're here, and we got airplane here and here. Now, another thing that people would always surprise is how tight we flew to get close we got. Because what you want to do is make sure you're flying, tighten up that formation. Because what you want to do is you want to have impact at the bomb site. Mm-hmm. That was the important thing, is that you didn't want to have this damn thing stretched out. And we would actually, this is what people have a tough time believing, that we would absolutely damn near have wingtip to wingtip fluff. You know, just hell, sometimes if you dropped it, you might. I mean, this is people, but
This is like playing 3-dimensional chess.
right. You absolutely, but you know that was you expected that of yourself. This wasn't anything. Everybody, this was what you were expected to do, and so you would just, that was your competence to do that. But the important thing was, so you'd tighten that up, and the lead person, I mean, his tail gunner, the tail gunner of that top person, he would report to the pilot as so and so is wide, or so he said, bring it in, whatever your call sign was. You know, couple 9, bring it in.
But everybody heard this on the chatter, right?
Oh yeah, because we're all
All
on the same channel in our squadron. We're all on the same channel, so you knew what the hell was going on. Yes, everybody.
So it was staggered up there by height,
Mm-hmm.
by width distance,
Right.
and by length distance.
Right.
So you don't drop bombs on the guy below you.
Right, but you're so close. I mean, those things were just, I mean, boom. Like hell, this person bombs up here, because he would release first, and boom, then you just.
Right.
The only person that was using the bomb site was the lead airplane. Mm-hmm. The others toggled off of him. When they saw his bombs go, then they'd trip theirs, and they'd all fall, you see.
Yep.
So that's the way in which that was done.
Because you were supposedly, ideally, you'd all be in the exact same position, and the bombs would fall on the location they were supposed to, all of them.
That's right. That's right. And if your target was socked in, then you always had an alternate target. Always had an alternate target to which to go.
You want a glass of water?
No, I'm okay. They always had an alternate target to which to go.
Did you have to use that?
Yeah, we did. I remember one time and you talk about things can get screwed up. I know one time we were going into Frankfurt. As I recall, we were coming down from the north. So we were coming from the northwest, flying in a southeasterly direction, and we get damn near to the target, and hell, here's another group coming in on our left, coming from the left, at the very same altitude that we are. And the commander had a horrible decision to make. Either, boom, take the chance that we can get through this, or have 9 aircraft all plowed into the other 9 aircraft, or to pull off and go around. So we get about, I don't know, maybe we were maybe 5 miles from the target, something like that. And so he decided to pull off, and go back to the IP, the initial point, and make another run at it. So when you make another run at it, hell, they know what the altitude, and the anti-aircraft knows. And believe it or not, he was severely criticized for the decision. He's got maybe 3 seconds to make a decision. Boom, you know, you got one choice. And so we come down again, and hell, they just shot the hell out of us, so coming down again. But that's just what happens, you see.
Well, the other group was coming to or going, or coming from a completely different mission.
They made a mistake, in our judgment, because we knew where we were going, but somebody got screwed up when we're going at the wrong direction at the same altitude, at the same time. Now, if they had been a minute earlier or a minute later, been all right. But boom, when you're right there at the same time, you got one hell of a proposed mess.
Murphy's Law.
That's right. That was exactly it. Another mission I remember is we were flying deputy lead, and God, the flak was, and it was just absolutely precise. And see, the German 88 is a battery of 4 guns, and like it goes boom, 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 boom. And I can still remember seeing that boom, 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 the 4th one, pow! And we got hit, and if it would have been a fraction of a blink of an eye sooner, we got hit just fractionally behind the left wing. And that's where that flak exploded and right up against the aircraft and blew a big hole in the aircraft. And we had just, when we got hit, we had just dropped our load. And the first thing you do after you drop your bombs, you retrim your aircraft because you have less weight. And
what was the bomb load? Was that 500 pounders or?
Yeah, usually they were 500 pounders. Usually had maybe 12 of them, so that'd be 6,000 pounds. Or you might have 1,000 pounders, something like that, as I recall.
You adjust accordingly.
Right, but you usually had. That was your usual load was about 6,000 pounds, but my point is when you as soon as you drop your load, your bomb load, you retrim your aircraft, because if you got less weight, your aircraft will want to climb, and so the first thing you do is as soon as you dropped your bombs, you made an immediate turn in some direction, maybe just 10 degrees or 15 or whatever, and you reduced your speed just a little bit, just to throw off the anti-aircraft. Right. Just do something. You might. So the first thing you do is you change your direction and just back off your speed a little bit because you want to descend. Well, it just so happened that our aircraft kept wanting to climb. Well, what had happened when we got hit by this flak, it shot out our controls. It knocked out our we found out later it knocked out our hydraulic system also, but also your controls to your flaps, your trim tab, your rudder, your vertical stabilizers, all those things. And so this aircraft kept wanting to climb. So it took both of us from them to get home was pushing on that yoke to keep the dams, because we had no way to retrim the aircraft because they'd been trimmed for a load, and so all we had was just pushing this goddamn nose, keeping this nose to keep it down instead of wanting to climb. But anyway, so we got home, and though we did find out that as soon as we got hit like that, then the bombardier was usually the alleged first aid officer. And so Ed said to Mike, you know, go back and see what's happened back there. So he went back, and what had happened was this Garland Miller.
Yep.
He took a direct hit. He got hit it right in the groin. We learned this later. And I mean, we learned from the flight surgeon later that where he got hit, eight pumps of the heart would be enough to pump the blood, so he'd be dead. So Garland was killed. And then if you have injured or killed on board, when you come into land, then you get priority to land, and you shoot a red flare. So we fired a red flare, and that gave us priority to land.
Now, who fires? Is it in the radio room through the roof?
Yeah, it's above, right above where the top turret engineer stands. There's a place there, and there's a little hole, and you can just fire a flare out of that.
With a flare gun, or was
Right.
it already positioned in the hole?
No, you had a flare gun, but
Okay, okay.
but you didn't. You never had it.
What color you wanted?
Well, yeah, as I recall, Red was killed, and that maybe had something else for injured. I don't know, but
Priority.
right. But anyway, the only time you ever used this thing was if you had that, and so. But we came into land, and found out that the tail wheel wouldn't come down because we'd lost our hydraulics, and so. This is what you make it. I was 20 years old, and I can remember thinking back, the decision I would have made, I'd landed the goddamn airplane and just get the goddamn thing down. But Ed decided to go around, and so he came around, and then on final approach, I mean, he would. That's all right.
Wait for those guys. Well, it's good. I don't want to pick
Okay.
it up.
All right. Okay.
Okay, we'll pick it up from the. Where was it? You guys were coming in for landing. The tail wheel doesn't.
Yeah, it went down. So the tail gunner could crank the tail wheel down manually.
It'd be Harold.
Yeah, Harold Hyde. And so we came into land, and the Ed said, give me, like when you're coming into land, usually when you first start in, you drop 15 degree flaps or something like that, and then when he said, give me 30. So that was the whomever was flying. If he was flying that day, he would tell me to give me 15 degrees or 30 or 45. Or if I was flying, I'd say, give me. You can just feel what you want. And so he was. He said, give me that's 30 degrees. Boom. Well, hell, the controls for the flaps were gone. So I said. No flaps. So when you came in and you have no flaps, you can't. The purpose of having your flaps is to reduce your lower your speed. Well, we didn't have it, so we couldn't lower our speed, other than just cutting back on the engines, which you do anyway when you're coming into land. And then so when we touched down, we thought, well, okay, we'll kind of apply the brakes. Well, also the had hydraulic brakes. Well, they were gone, so we had no flaps, no brakes, and at the end of the runway, maybe 15 feet beyond the end of the runway, there was a ditch or a depression. I don't know, maybe 3 feet deep, something like that. Well, that was the first time I really recognized how damn important seat belts are, because we hit that ditch or depression, and we bounced in the air, but fortunately had the seat belts on, because you got controls up above your head, and if I hadn't had those on, like hell, we both banged our goddamn heads on the top, and hell, probably punched holes in our head. But anyway, Ed and I did not. Obviously they had the ambulance crew there, and they came to pick us up, and that's when we learned that Garland was dead. Ed and I did not know that before that.
Right.
So, but anyway, that was
Yeah.
the significance of that. And
Well, at least you guys made it back.
oh yeah, oh hell yes. I mean that's I was so fortunate, you know, because you know all these others that didn't.
Yeah.
That didn't make it. You know, how you see them killed, you saw them blow up.
Like we were talking about earlier, it was nothing more than on-the-job training because nobody
That's right.
had ever done this stuff before the war.
Exactly. It was just that was it.
Yeah.
But it was expected.
Yeah.
It was expected. The thing that really surprised me, as I think back about going through aviation cadet school, like in primary flying school, you'd come back at night, and hell, this bunk is empty. You'd say, God, well, that meant the person had washed out. And so they washed out in primary flying school, they washed out in basic flying school. I don't remember, there might have been one or two or three that washed out in advanced flying school, but I guess they figured, well, if they got this far, they got this much invested in you, for Christ's sake, can't we keep this person, you see? So I flew as a co-pilot, and then I also later got my own crew. And again, I was the youngest person. I was a pilot, but I was by far the youngest person.
Well, when you guys got it, they got it down here that that ship was hit on 14th March of 45.
Is that it?
Spring of the middle of March of 45.
Yeah.
And Garland got it.
Right.
I don't know what does FEH mean after your designation. Like he's got Ed Aubuchon, P pilot, and then FEH. And every one of you guys has FEH behind your names, except for Garland Miller. He was a waist gunner. He's KIA.
Yeah.
So I don't know what FEH stands for.
I don't know, but obviously we know what the other is.
He's also got SEELZE behind that on the date.
I don't know.
There must be some designation for him, I guess. Official.
I don't know what
Some
that is.
Army Air Corps designate.
No, I don't know what that is.
All right, so then you got well, I was just that next month, you got to Thorpe Abbott in February of 45, according to this information.
Right.
And you got your first flak was a month later. It was that quick.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't remember what our first mission was. I thought we flew in February.
Well, it said, well, you got to Thorpe Abbott, so you could have flown the next day.
Well, no, we didn't. I think we flew probably maybe four or 5 days after we got there.
So we flew 13 actual combat missions plus a food drop, or
Right.
a couple of food drops.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And like I was quite. Do you remember every mission, or they some of them all look alike?
No, I don't remember them.
Some.
I just remember some of them. You know, because
What
that.
were the food drop ones for?
Well, you're dropping food. We hauled food over, and instead of dropping, you fly at a low, slow altitude into Holland to just drop food. This was just after. At the very tail end of the war, maybe just before May 8th.
Right. For the surrender.
Yeah, because you drop food into Holland, Belgium, France, just to feed the people.
Right. So what'd they do? Just drop it out of bomb bay
Right,
doors and
right.
the chutes open?
Right. Just drop it and see what. Then you went into
Did the Dutch people know it was coming?
Oh yeah, they would tell them what it was.
I wonder why they didn't use C-47. It's probably busy elsewhere, I guess, huh?
Well, that a C-47 didn't have a good way to throw it out. See, a C-47's got a door. They don't have anything underneath. So the realistic thing is to either have a B-17 or a B-24s because they could haul it in the bomb bay and then open the bomb bay and drop it.
Okay.
That was just realistic.
I would imagine that the air war was probably done by the time your food missions came around because the priority would be the bombing missions, right?
Oh yeah, well we were bombing up until very late. I mean, 'cause hell, see,
So you only went through half the missions. You know, you didn't need to make it to 25 missions because it was over.
Right, but the thing is, they had those jet aircraft.
Yep.
They also had rocket aircraft.
Yeah.
They had the ME-163, and you could see that rocket aircraft take off. And just boom, you could see it, and it could usually make one pass, but it was so goddamn fast.
It's probably pretty ineffectual by then.
Well, I mean, they could make a pass, and they're going so damn fast. I mean, nothing else could catch them. You see, so they could. I mean, their whole purpose was to make one pass. I mean, as I recall, because they didn't have enough fuel, rocket fuel, because they got to get it down too.
Right.
You see, but they didn't have that many. They didn't have a great abundance of 163s, but they did.
Right.
But these ME-262s were damned talented aircraft. Very, very talented aircraft, and they were fast. They could come in, they could jump at you, and be gone.
What did you think? What did you guys think of that? Were you on did you have throat mics then?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They said like, did you see that? What was?
Well, you just I don't know what we did said after, but boom, you saw it, and then I mean, I remember seeing these three aircraft. As I said, one went over the right wing, one went under the left right wing, and then one went under the left wing, and he, instead of us, he pulled up and blasted Jack Thrasher. And I think Don Bridge was our tail gunner. As I recall, he said he saw maybe 5 or 6 shoots that got out of that aircraft.
Yeah.
But so that'd be about 5 of them that didn't, you see.
Yeah.
So
you never found out what happened to those guys.
well, I know Jack Thrasher was killed. I mean, because
Were killed.
I just remember Jack Thrasher because I knew we were flying off Jack Thrasher. That's the name I remember.
Yeah.
You see, and I suppose Thrasher had maybe he had flown 6 missions, something like that, 5 or 6 or something. But he had not flown a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
But he was also a very competent person. So you were just expected to do your job. That was the important thing. But I did on some of those food drop missions. I had my own crew then, and I don't remember how it
Being
came.
the experienced 20-year-old guy you were,
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
you learned quick.
Right. I mean, that just if they just kind of accepted it. Okay, you did this, and then you did this and did that. That was it.
When did you find out when your last mission was? When you got back to after the last mission, or be the second to the last one? They said, "Fellas, it looks like they're going to surrender at the briefing." Or
I don't remember that.
You don't remember that?
John, I don't remember that.
Okay.
No, I mean, that wasn't. It was just.
So your last station it was Thorpe Abbott.
Well, I was stationed at Thorpe Abbott all the time when I was
Right.
in the 8th Air Force.
I mean,
Right.
your last mission was still at Thorpe Abbott.
Oh yeah. Right. Mm-hmm.
And then they said, "Fellas, the war's over." Somebody must have made an announcement. They must have called everybody out.
Well, I mean, it wasn't. May 8th was the end of the war in Europe,
Right.
and it just so happened. I remember on May 8th, I had a pass. I was in London on May 8th, and remember the song when the lights come on again all over the world.
Oh yeah.
Well, let's see. The lights had been out in London for 6 years.
Right. Blackout.
Right. And I was in London the night they turned the lights on again.
Really.
And you talk about the
Party.
the jubilation of people.
Right.
I mean, it's just hard to imagine. But, that was, the English people they're great people. The French, hell, I said after the war was over, if I ever had to get into another one of these goddamn things, I want the Germans on my side instead of the goddamn French. And that's just my assessment, because I used to get into France quite a bit.
You mean after the war?
Yeah. After the war was over, I mean, ended up in Munich, Germany. And I was there, and I said, either find me something to do or send me home, for Christ's sake. I didn't have enough points because everybody had so many points.
Right.
I didn't have enough points, so they said, well, okay. The only thing we got, so they sent me down to southern France to an airline instrument school, and so I went down to southern France, and they had this airline instrument because they knew they had to, there were personnel, they had to fly around there. And so I went down to this airline instrument school down in southern France and completed that. And then I was assigned to Berlin, to Tempelhof in Berlin.
Wait a minute, though. How did you get from Thorpe Abbott to Munich?
This was really crazy. Instead of, hell, we used to fly back and forth. We used to go to Munich and pick up people and fly them back,
Right.
or we'd haul food over. Sometimes we didn't always drop it. Sometimes we would land and unload it.
Ferry missions. And stuff
Right,
like that.
right. This was after the war was over.
Right.
And then when it came time for us to close down, hell, instead of them flying us over, we took a bus from Thorpe Abbott up to the train station to Dis. Went from there down to, well, I don't know, in the harbor there in south of London, took a goddamn boat over to Le Havre, France, and in Le Havre, they put us on a goddamn truck, like in a big truck, and hauled us to a train station. And this was, so then we spent about 5 or 6 days in this goddamn box cars going from Le Havre to Munich, Germany. You've heard the phrase 40 and 8?
Yeah.
They say that means 40 men or 8 horses.
Right.
That was it. And so they put us in this goddamn boxcar and hauled us from there to Munich. And I remember going through this cold. Jesus Christ, it was cold.
Yeah.
And I remember we pulled in. Obviously, a freight train doesn't have any priority, and so they pulled in this little French town.
Yeah.
And there was a bunch of guys in a boxcar just ahead of ours. Those goddamn clowns, they got in the train to stop, and they got out, and they went to this depot and picked up this stove that had a fire in it, and they had some coal there, and so they picked this goddamn stove and brought it out, and it tore down the pipe going up to the ceiling, and so they jiggered this goddamn, put this stove, and then they closed the door, and now this goddamn pipe sticking out of it. And the thing I remember is, this as we started to pull out that day, here this goddamn station master, he came back, and he saw his goddamn stove is gone, and he comes out, and I remember his waving his goddamn arms like this, So, I mean, you just do different things. And then the commander of this train, he had just come over. He got there just after the war was over.
Right.
And so he had never had any combat experience, nothing at all. Well, by God, he was going to tell us what the hell, how to do things.
Right.
And so he started talking one day, and another guy just took out his goddamn 45 and went, pow, pow, pow. And he looked at this guy and goes, pow again. That guy got the message, and he shut up, for Christ's sake. He didn't try to tell us what the hell to do, you see. So sometimes you have to kind of get people's attention to.
Yeah. War was over, and you're still on the clock. They're trying to get your purse.
Right, but don't try it, you goddamn ground pounder, don't try to give us a goddamn ration of garbage. We'll do what we're supposed to do, but we're going to kind of do it our way too.
Yeah.
So that was it. But anyway, I started to tell you, I went to this airline instrument school, and then I ended up in Berlin, at Tempelhof in Berlin, And then I flew for this military airline up there for about 6 months.
What were you flying?
C-47s.
But was that the beginning of the well, that was in the beginning of the Berlin Air. Was
That's
it
right.
really?
I was flying the Berlin Airlift before they called it the Berlin Airlift.
Okay.
And the thing is that, see, I was about the only B-17 pilot that ever did that, because these other guys, they would not little themselves to flying a twin-engine aircraft.
Especially a cargo aircraft.
Well, where they've been flying 4-engine aircraft.
Yeah.
I just wanted something to do, for Christ's sake. So that's when I was stationed in Berlin at Tempelhof, and then one day, like we were flying. They were also bringing civilian personnel over, and they were just transferring people all over.
Oh yeah.
And you see, Berlin was occupied. At that time, we were in the Russian territory.
Yeah.
Because just east of Frankfurt, that's where the Russian territory began. But in Berlin was occupied by the Russians, the French, the British, and the Americans. There were 4
Sectors.
Right. And so, like one day, I'd fly from Berlin to Frankfurt to Paris, and the next day I'd fly from Paris to Bremen and back to Berlin.
Whatever the assignment was.
Well, yeah, that was it.
How long did it take you to get checked out on a 47?
Oh.
From a B-17?
Well, it didn't take long.
Didn't seem like there'd be that much difference.
Oh, it wasn't.
Half the engines.
No, I remember the first time I ever taxied a C-47 out to DC-3 out to take off. You know, I get in the airplane, boom, I crank it up and take it out, and hell, I go down into the taxiway and swing it around, hell. And this instructor said, I know what you've been doing in the past, but he said, just think, if you had a load of people back there, you'd be throwing those goddamn people all over this airplane back there. He said, you just got to be a little more cautious, a little easier. You can't just flip this thing around like you've been accustomed to. So that was something else you learned to do differently, you see. But the important thing was to fly instruments, and then the instruments at that time it was crude, for Christ's sake. I mean, it was just it just compared to what can be done today and what could have been done 30 years ago, the instrumentation, or 40 years ago of an aircraft compared to what we were doing this was 64 years ago.
Yeah.
The instrumentation was just, God. One of the most hair-raising things I ever had was I was going from Berlin to Bremen one day, and you know, you'd fly in a lot of weather because your aircraft, you didn't have any oxygen in it, so you couldn't take your passengers up too high. So usually about 8,000 is as high as we would go with a load of people. And I was going about, I was in the weather, and about halfway between Berlin and Bremen, my electrical system went out. Everything is gone. Nothing. No radios, no instrumentation, no nothing. And I thought, oh yeah, you know, well, hell, by then I was 21 by then, and I thought, oh well, hell, I'll, you know, by the time I get to Bremen, I'll be out of this stuff. Oh, you got to watch, and you know, oh by God, you know what time you're supposed to be there. You know, you had your flight plan and your ETA, your estimated time of arrival. I thought, you know, shit, you know, I got like 3 minutes and I'm still in this goddamn stuff. And so I started letting down, and I thought I'll break out of this stuff, and I got down to 1,000 feet, and hell, I'm still in it. And there was a big tower still there in Bremen, and I thought, Jesus Christ, of all things I don't want to do is plow to that goddamn tower. So I took a heading and went out knew it'd be out over the North Sea, kept letting down. Well, your depth perception over water isn't as good as it is over land. But I got down to 400 feet indicated, and I'm out over the North Sea. And he thought, well, what's your choice? Well, I just, made a left turn, and just by chance, I split the goddamn Bremen Harbor. You talk about luck. Just split, and I'm at 400 feet, I'm still in and out of it. And I could see the airport over here occasionally. And so I thought, well, I'm going to try to make this short runway. And there was this short runway, but just at the end of this runway, like if this is the runway here, there was a canal right here. So, and it was a short runway, so I came in, I got the thing down, and I just dropped it over that goddamn canal because I had such a short runway, I had to get it down. And I bounced, for Christ's sake, and when finally shut it down, shut the airplane down, I mean, the comments of the people, there were, he's got to be the dumbest goddamn person and the most incompetent person that ever got into an aircraft. Well, I never had the courage to tell them, folks, you're damn near dead, for Christ's sake. So you ought to just be thankful you're here. But
there's no electrical instrument panel.
That wouldn't have solved anything. But anyway, that was their.
These are all high-ranking military guys.
Well, they were military and then high-ranking civilians. But they thought, he's got to be the dumbest, incompetent bastard in existence. But but anyway, I survived and got. So that was that's kind of my remembrance of.
Well, I was going to ask
John.
you, when you go back, when was the last time you saw the crew? When was your last
I
demise?
saw Abishan.
No, I mean at Thorpe Abbott.
Oh, I would say in probably September.
45.
45. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you guys were still there for several months at Thorpe Abbott
Right.
before you went
Right.
to school and went across to
Right.
Frankfurt
Mm-hmm.
or Munchen.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And all those guys went home, or did they have time to put it? Did they have points to
Well,
crew?
I don't remember what happened to the enlisted personnel, but just so happened that Abishan also ended up in Berlin. And he was you talk about the goofy things in the world. He was in charge of the military police in Berlin, for Christ's sake.
Nobody loved that.
Oh hell! Well, hell, he had
Did you run into him over there?
hadn't run into him. And
He goes, "What do they got you doing?" "I'm flying C-46. What are you doing?" "I'm in charge of military
police, right? Mm-hmm. And the thing is, he had since he was in charge of the military police, he had his own Jeep and could do whatever the hell ever he wanted. But he also had this German Fraulein that was living with him, and he'd bringing her in the goddamn into the base on the barracks. We were staying
probably for interrogation, I would guess.
or whatever. But he would. And when he would pull up to the gate, they'd see military police.
Yeah.
And so, hell, they didn't question him, but he'd always have his girlfriend sitting in the back seat laying down, and hell, then he'd go in. And so, that type of thing. And so, then I saw him a couple, 3 times after he got out of the service.
Back in the States, you mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, so what you did, how long did you do the Berlin Airlift, and what were you, besides passengers, did you all, because I remember the documentary for a lot of those guys hauled coal because nobody
Right.
had anything to burn.
No, mostly we were flying, but we were flying passengers, personnel. Once in a while, we'd
You were VIP stuff. Then.
right. Mm-hmm. But we had this zone in which we could fly. We had a certain procedure.
Corridor.
The corridor. We had this corridor in which we would fly. And I remember one time, this Russian yak comes up and he's sitting on my goddamn wing there, and I just kind of waved to him like this, It's like, after a while you don't care, say what the hell. But that was kind of Well, but I was very, in my judgment, the best education I ever got was going through aviation cadet school.
Right.
That was really the best.
So after, when the Berlin Airlift was over,
Mm-hmm.
well, that's probably when, let's see, it was 1948, right? But it started earlier than that, but they didn't call it officially.
Right, right. Well, I got out of the military in August of '46.
Okay.
That's when I got
Got
out.
enough points.
Yeah, finally, right.
And so how'd you get from your last station, which would be what, Berlin
Mhm.
or Frankfurt?
Berlin.
Okay.
Mhm.
Do you hop a plane going back to the States?
No, we took a boat back. No, we took.
Couldn't get it. What about all the aircraft that are coming back that they needed? Who'd they fly how'd they get all the aircraft back there?
Beats the hell out of me. I know that I came back on what's called the Norway Victory, and I've never been on a goddamn boat since then. I don't ever plan to get on a goddamn boat. I mean, you talk about the most unexciting thing in the world. That's to be on a goddamn boat. You look at water, for Christ's sake, big.
Well, what
Goddamn
was it, a
deal.
transport ship?
Yeah.
Or a converted luxury liner or something?
Well, the Ile-de-France, when it went over, was a converted luxury liner.
Right.
It was owned by France, but just a victory ship that we came back on. That was all. But anyway,
Liberty ship.
that's right. But it got us home.
Did you get back? What was your port of entry?
In New
New York?
Jersey? No, in New Jersey,
Jersey
someplace.
somehow?
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, you what? Had to go to because you weren't out yet, right?
No, we went to Illinois, someplace.
Chicago,
Champaign, I think, or someplace north of Chicago, someplace.
Great Lakes,
Could be. I don't remember really. That all I wanted to do was get the hell out of here.
and then that's probably where you got your discharge, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And they gave you some final pay,
Well, yeah, you get paid every month.
cash,
Right, you get paid every. I sent half my money home to my mother
right?
when I went
Now,
over.
did you call from New York?
I don't remember.
remember?
I probably
They knew you were
did.
coming. It was because some guys like to surprise people.
No, that's not my nature.
Yeah.
So I probably called or in some way got a message because it came home on the train.
Right, from Chicago to Des Moines.
No, to Nevada.
To Nevada? Oh, right to Nevada.
Right, because the the Chicago Northwestern Railroad went right through Nevada.
Oh, okay.
So I did got from this place in Illinois to there, but I just wanted out. You know, I had
Enough is enough.
yeah I had 1,120 hours by the time I was 21 years old. I got so goddamn sick of flying airplanes. I got like, if I never get in another goddamn airplane, my life would be too soon. So I used to fly quite a bit commercial. I had reasons in business to fly commercial. But flying today, in my judgment, is a pain in the hind end. It's just, Jesus, it's just what you have to go through.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just, that's the way it is.
I know.
But
So
anyway.
what did you do when you got back? What was the first thing you did? You got off the train. Your folks were waiting for you. Your brothers and sisters there.
Oh, I recall. I don't know. I had decided I was going to go to service, go to college rather. In fact, when I was in Berlin, you know, I had commented about the fact that I wanted to go to college because I went into the military just right out of high school, and probably going through aviation cadet school, probably at least half, 2/3 of those aviation cadet school had some college. And I thought, okay, I decided that that's what I was going to do. And so, but just shortly before I left Berlin, I decided I kind of liked what I was doing there. Hell, it'd be, life didn't have a hell of a lot of boom. Hell, you had these German Fräuleins and, had French women and whatever. And so I thought, this isn't all bad. So I decided, let's try to sign over from this 6 months. And this one guy he said, I've heard you say you're going to go to school. He said, I'm the only person that can authorize you to stay. I refuse. You're going home. As you said, you wanted to go to college. So you're going home.
Don't they have colleges over there?
You're going home. So that's how it is. So I immediately enrolled at Drake
Yeah.
when I got home, and so that's what I did. And so
And you haven't been in a B-17 since?
nope. Well, I did out in Palm Springs. They had one out there one time, so I crawled in it. But it's
Don't miss it whatsoever, huh?
no.
Even though they were one of the best airplanes made.
Oh yeah, it was.
Come home on a wing and a prayer.
Yeah, it took it could take a hell lot of abuse.
Yeah.
But you know, it's just there's an old adage in flying: takeoffs are optional, landings are mandatory. Once you get the goddamn thing up, somebody's got to get the goddamn thing down. But you don't have to take off. You can always say, no, I won't do this.
Fuel leak.
I won't do this. I won't do this.
Then what would happen if somebody said that?
Well, you know, they if you said no, I mean, they knew you had, okay. I don't ever remember doing that,
Right.
but that was your
I'm
option.
Sure some guys did.
But in the combat, no, you didn't have that option.
Right.
No, if they said you're flying today, boom, you're flying today.
Court martial.
Right, you're right. And as you know, in your career, I mean, you know, you have discipline, and you have responsibility, and you then you get to know, as you think back on, whom you can trust, and that's the important thing. Everybody has a job, a function, and if they're not all working together, the task won't be completed. It just won't.
Teamwork.
That's right. Absolutely. Okay, John, that's kind of what it is.
Huh?
Yeah.
Well, all right, let me pause this. Okay, the red's on. What are we looking at?
Okay, well, that's the aircraft in which we were flying that day. That I don't remember what mission it was, but we took heavy flak that day and took that shot right behind the left wing and got a direct burst of flak, and that's what killed Garland Miller. Got out all of our controls to our ailerons, our rudders, vertical stabilizer, flaps, hydraulic system, whole thing. So, but at least we got it down, and that's.
What was this? Was this a B-17G?
It was either probably
B, F, G.
probably,
how many different?
It was probably an F. Probably.
And there's no camouflage now. They didn't.
We had no camouflage.
Okay.
We didn't have camouflage.
Hey, who's this guy? What are we looking at?
Well, that's when I was flying for that EATS up there, stands for European Air Transport Service.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know, I was just probably going, I don't know whether into Paris or Bremen or Frankfurt or something. I'm probably walking into the in the control shack to either to sign in or depart, one or the other. Well, that was at a
I got the
reunion.
microphone right here.
That was at a reunion in Little Rock.
The guy with the lion on the sweater.
Yeah.
That's okay. What's
Well, on the top row, from right to left, that's Mike Alexander, Oliver Dunn, Ed Aubuchon, and then myself on the far right. And on the bottom row from right to left, that's Harold Hyde, Bob Arthur, Duke Gillen, Garland Miller, who was the one that was killed, and Don Bridge. Don Bridge is on the far right on the bottom row.
Okay. Okay. Whoops. See, in the computer, they'll just be able to 90-degree that thing. I wanted to fit it into rectangle.
Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
there you are in your gear.
Mm-hmm.
This is what now? What are we looking
Well,
at?
you see, I'm flying a DC-3 at that time,
Mhm.
but as you can see, that my vision. See, I'm on instruments, so I'm concentrating on the instrumentation on the panel, And the only reason I ever kept that is because I smoked at that time.
Okay.
No, that's just on the other side of the aircraft. That just shows where the flak went out, and it shows the holes in also the smaller holes that from flak that was going out on the opposite side from where we took the initial blast.
What are we looking at?
Well, see, that was on our way home, and someone else had a camera, and that's the airplane in which we were flying when Garland Miller got killed that day when we took that hit.
Before that, because I don't see the hole in the side.
Well, you can't see it because of the wing. You
Well,
can't.
this one's behind. Oh, that's on the other side. Oh, wait a minute.
No,
Yeah, okay, that's right.
You
It's
can't
on the
see
other
it
side.
because no.
It's right there.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.